All right, I think what we'll do is we'll get started here. And so welcome today. Hopefully your Friday is going well for you. Feel free to put into the chat how your trimester is going here, 3.2. And, or, what your weekend plans might be, Give me a little sense what's happening here. All right, I know for me, possible History Center visit or a kayak adventure. See if we can get that in. Of course, it also is a sacred weekend for us in Minnesota in that it's the fishing opener. And so some people might want to engage in that outdoor activity as well. All right. So whatever it is, what you're doing this weekend, hopefully you have a good time doing it. If you're working, make that money. The advisory lesson today was all about financial wellness, and so perhaps maybe using your money that you earned over the weekend to help build a good foundation there. Or looks like sleeping, perhaps, maybe because of activities. Maybe you're involved in a play or a sporting event, or you've been working a lot. Let the weekend be there for you to recharge your cells. Okay, so with that, I want to just move on and focus on what we're doing for today. So you should be working on the origins, tactics, and organizations activity. And so what I would like to do before kind of opening it up to talk a little bit more about the OTO, I have a video clip here. And it was one that I was going to show on Wednesday, but opted not to, so I'm going to go and do that today. And it's going to really focus on the emerging movements of the early 20th century here in regards to advocating for civil rights and for the African American community. So we're looking more at organizations and tactics here, aspect of the OTO, and of course the tactics and the origins in many ways organizations are building on the origins of the civil rights movement. So here, let me cue up my video clip here, and I'll just throw a little disclaimer out there. One of the issues that is taken on in the civil rights movement is lynching, and so there might be some images of lynching in this clip here. So viewer discretion is needed. All right, so let me mute my mic so we can hear the video a little better.
As their leader. Now, W.E.B. Du Bois represented a class of African Americans who repudiated the idea that the only way forward was through subservience. Their belief was that the pursuit of equality, the pursuit of equal citizenship, was through agitation, and that we needed to know more about law and our rights to agitate at all levels for better social policies for African Americans.
To plot a path forward, Du Bois joined forces with a like-minded newspaper publisher named William Monroe Trotter. In the summer of 1905, Du Bois and Trotter invited 59 prominent black men to a meeting in Fort Erie, Ontario. They named their organization the Niagara Movement.
The Niagara Movement was an organization of African Americans who are critical of the approach of Booker T. Washington. And they offer a program that is far more into resistance, far more into protest, far more into a kind of nationalist vision. It's going to be working with whites on their own terms.
One of the Niagara Movement's priorities was to agitate against the racial violence that had persisted since Reconstruction. Their main focus was on lynching. In Springfield, Illinois in 1908, unsubstantiated rumors of a sexual assault enraged white residents who took the law into their own hands. The mob murdered 2 black men, injured dozens of black people, and burned over 40 homes to the ground. The carnage made national news.
The riot that took place in Springfield in 1908 somehow captured the public imagination.
The fact that this happened in the North, in the home of Lincoln, was shocking.
It was a moment when reformers in the North, a number of them who were working on so-called Negro issues, knew that what was happening to African Americans was poisoning the entire nation.
One person who drew attention to the riot was a white journalist named William English Walling.
Walling says that it's time now that blacks have to have complete equality. And so this was like a clarion call to do something else, have another kind of organization. And this is really some of the beginnings of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. The NAACP will put lynching at the center of its agenda.
The NAACP had a largely white leadership early on. There are African Americans who are skeptical of the organization. There is this question, well, I don't know if we can trust them. Are they only going to be advocating for themselves? Are they really out there for me?
White progressives realized that it was essential to have African Americans as part of it. And that's why W.B. Du Bois's presence in the founding of the NAACP was so critical.
Du Bois, who had been leading the Niagara Movement, heretofore an all-black group, but had struggled around the exact thing that an interracial group would have no problem with, which was access to funding and, the people who could write checks that kept the movement afloat.
Du Bois' official title was Director of Research and Publications. And he edited the NAACP's journal of news and opinion entitled The Crisis.
The Crisis was the perfect vehicle through which Du Bois could blend political activism with art and literature. A monthly magazine with nationwide circulation, it chronicled Black achievement, laid out the goals of the NAACP, and agitated for social justice.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll stop it there with that, and here we go. And so looking at that, again, your vehicle for the origins, tactics, and organizations activity is the newspaper, and the importance of the newspaper to get one's views out there. But you can see that there is another a nationwide publication that's associated with the NAACP called The Crisis, and The Crisis is still in publication today. So like I always do when I show video clips, does anyone have any kind of like immediate reactions or thoughts to it in terms of maybe what you saw, or perhaps maybe how you could find some commonalities with what was going on then in terms of the type of organizations and things associated with it to today as well? So does anyone have any like quick feedback? You can unmute or put it in the chat, your thoughts. Okay, while you're thinking of your deep thought here, a couple things, like the big issue that for organizations like the Niagara Movement, but also the NAACP, and also on the minds of many of African Americans and the leaders, is what is the big issue? And it was highlighted in this clip. What is the big issue in the civil rights movement early on? Lynchings, absolutely, lynchings. It's something that Ida B. Wells had spotlighted during the Reconstruction era, one in which would force her to ultimately leave the Memphis, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee area and go up into Chicago and still continue to advocate for a strong anti-lynching law. Every time there has been an effort to take on lynching, there has been some obstacles, and we still do not have to this day a federal anti-lynching law on the books. And one has been reintroduced into Congress, and we'll see where that goes from there. Minnesota does have an anti-lynching law on the books. It was put on there around 1920, 1921 after the lynching of 3 African Americans in Duluth. And the newspaper in Minnesota, the Western Appeal, was very outspoken, and a journalist associated with the women's suffrage movement in Minnesota, also an African American woman, gets behind the effort to really push it, and ultimately Minnesota does have one on the book there. So that's kind of like the big burning issue here. Also in that clip, it brought up some good points as well in terms of when we look at tactics and organizations, the need and the presence for leaders, and in this case, African American leaders, need to have a prominent role. Now, the NAACP presents maybe some road bumps here in this idea, in that it is an integrated group, and so it does bring in the allies, one could say, with the NAACP, but still needs to find a way to get African Americans to have a more prominent role in it. And we'll see that, play out again in the throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century as well. But it also, though, brings, as the one historian said, that what Du Bois knew that it's going to bring a funding stream. All right. So if you're going to have a movement, funds need to be available for it. And so being an integrated organization, perhaps more affluent white allies can open up their pocketbooks and be part of it. And then also, again, the talented 10th, being a part of organizations like the Niagara Movement and the NAACP can also help out. All right, so got myself really involved in there for a moment. All right, so any final thoughts here about this particular video clip here? Okay, so now the origin, tactics, and organizations. This assignment ultimately is going to be due on Monday, May 17th. And so that means today and the weekend, take some time to work on it as well, and then Monday complete it. So this is an assignment that you will do on paper. We want it, one could say, that's a little old school, but that's something that Ms. Ida and I would like you to do here. And remember that we are looking for really 9 articles here. Remember, you've got 3 topics or 3 categories, and you got to pick 3 topics from each category. So we're looking for at least 9 topics, and so that translates to 9 articles. But as I had said on Wednesday, that these articles, they can be a variety of articles. You know, they can be hard news that you would find in like your section A of the newspaper, or you got your editorials in there. It could be your little Q&A or human interest type stories. And ultimately, I think it probably depends on the topic that you are picking to kind of play out what kind of article it should be. Now, some people might be concerned about their handwriting, and so whether or not I'll be able to read it. And, you know, I've been teaching since 1992, so I have seen a lot of handwriting, and so I wouldn't necessarily be worried about that. But if you are worried, I suppose you can always type it up, you know, type up that article, print it out, and then tape it onto your paper, or paste it onto your paper, whatever works for you in that regard. So a little flexible there. The drawings, you know, ideally should be hand drawn, but again, it is the 20th century for many of these topics, late 19th century. So there might be some visuals out there as well that you can use, so you can find them on the web and print them out too. Okay. So ideal here, we want this to look like a newspaper at the end. All right, so with that, is there any questions, concerns related to the origin, tactics, and organization's activity here? All right, so it seems like there doesn't seem to be any questions or concerns here. And so hopefully, you know, again, whatever you're doing over this weekend, keep it safe, and hope that your weekend is enjoyable as well. And so with that, I would like to extend to you to have a wonderful weekend, and you are free to exit the Google Meet. So thank you for attending.